The Deepwater Horizon well continues to spew oil into the Gulf, over 29,000 square miles of the surface covered with oil, and it's only getting worse. In spite of BP's claim in the permitting process that in the event of a spill, 17.6 million gallons of oil per day could be skimmed, their actual recovery has averaged only 0.34 million gallons per day, or less than 2% of their pre-drill assurances. Meanwhile, the problem continues to grow and is worsened with the use of massive amounts of toxic chemicals to make the problem drop out of sight. We think the oil should be recovered in open water while it is available on the surface, before it reaches shore. We know our method can clean the Gulf surface much faster than anything being used, and we want to prove it at our expense. Petroleum and Environmental Cleanup Incorporated developed a surface recovery system capable of recovering oily surface water significantly faster than any other system currently being used in the Gulf. In fact, engineering calculations show that just one of these systems can recover the oily water from the Gulf surface faster than all other systems currently being used combined. We would like your help in getting this system into action as soon as possible to begin attacking this growing problem. Dr. Ed Overton is a professor at LSU who works with NOAA and heads a federal chemical hazard assessment team for oil spills. Dr. Overton has been testing samples of the spilled crude oil in the Gulf. According to Dr. Overton, this type of oil involved is a major problem. It's a heavier blend and is very dense. This oil also emulsifies well. That type of mixture essentially removes all the best oil cleanup weapons. CBS News magazine's 60 Minutes went out and got a closer look at the sludge.
We went out on the Gulf and found mats of thick floating oil. No one has a fix on how much oil is shooting out of the well, but some of the best estimates suggest it's the equivalent of the Exxon Valdez spill every 4 to 7 days.
The best line of defense with this oily mess is to recover it from the surface before it coats the shoreline or bottom. Shrimp boats are being used to collect the oil. Although a limited number of the shrimp boats have small skimmers, the majority of the shrimp boats are collecting oil by dragging absorbent booms. In this configuration, a typical oil corralling boom is used, seen here in the orange. And inside of that is a white absorbent boom. The purpose of the oil corralling boom is to hold the oil to give the absorbent boom time to soak up the oil. The total amount of oil that can be collected by this method is severely limited just by the volume of the absorbent boom. If you look at these aerial photographs, it becomes pretty obvious that these collection booms don't really do a very good job of holding the oil. In almost every case, you can see that even when the oil is corralled back to the bottom of the V formed by the boom, most of it spills out underneath the bottom of the boom. This can be seen by the trail of oily water left stirred up behind the boom. It seems pretty evident that this system just moves the oil around more than it collects it. Although there are dozens of skimmer vessels that are reportedly being used in this spill, the vast majority of these units are small skimmers that can only work in harbors or inland areas. There are a very limited number of vessels that can work offshore, where they are most needed right now. Of the few skimmers that can be used offshore, some of the largest are the 6 MSRC Responder-class vessels. These 190-foot vessels recover oil through the use of something called the Trans-Rex skimmer. The Trans-Rex skimmer is used in conjunction with 95 meters of guide boom, which is used to corral the oil and bring it to the skimmer. Shown here is the Mississippi Responder with its Trans-Rex system fully deployed. You can see where the boom system has corralled some oil for the skimmer to pick up. Can you see the skimmer? Here's some help. The only oil that the skimmer can collect is the oil that spills over the skimmer's perimeter lip after being brought to the unit. This video was taken by Hurricane Creek keepers on May 7th as they flew over the spill to get a look at the cleanup efforts.
I was horrified when I looked and saw how many boats there were on the horizon. It didn't seem to be doing anything at all that was effective. Going around in circles, small boats with booms on the back of them, sent out to gather up oil in what looked like teacups compared to the horizon.
Each of these systems is passive in that they rely more on having the oil brought to them. After a relatively small amount has been collected, operations must be stopped to transfer the collected residue to a larger storage vessel. The BRS-2 system differs in that it aggressively goes after the oil, acting as a finely tuned slicer that removes the surface layer as it travels. An adjustable mandible, which rides at the optimum level for the oil being encountered, directs water down while acting as an accelerator to quickly move the collected oil into the collection sump. The BRS-2 is not handicapped by having to spend time setting, retrieving, and moving containment booms, so it can spend its time actually collecting oil. The unit works directly in conjunction with the storage vessel, so the residue is transferred in real time as it is collected. It is anticipated that a large open hopper dredge would be the ideal storage vessel for use with this system. These vessels have large storage capacity, fast offload ability, and when working with oil that will naturally separate, they can also decant from the bottom, allowing for further on-site separation as allowed. However, almost any tanker barge or storage vessel could be used, including those that are currently on-site, as shown here. John Hofmeister, former president of Shell Oil, had this to say on CNN's State of the Union.
Now we see playing out in front of us the largest oil spill in the history of the country. I think that we are still relying upon old techniques for the control of the surface oil. I think we have to change our mindset, put a new paradigm in place, and instead of dispersing and burning and booming, what about collecting? What about collecting that oil, setting up a row of barges, a wall of barges with high-volume pumps, or use of super tankers that could drift back and forth in the sea, sucking in huge volumes of, yes, water and oil, but get the oil off the sea to start with. We don't seem to be going in that direction.
Engineering calculations show that just one BRS-2 can collect several times the amount of oily water from the surface that is currently being collected by all skimming operations combined. This chart gives some examples of the BRS-2's collection ability under various circumstances. For example, if working in an area where the oil emulsion is in the top 3 inches below the surface and conditions dictated a forward speed of 2 knots, almost 2,000 gallons would be collected per minute. At 3 knots travel speed, more than 2,800 gallons per minute would be collected. This translates into just under 2 million gallons per day collected by one BRS-2, as compared to the total collection of less than 500,000 gallons per day being collected, according to current information. It is our view that using a fleet of BRS-2 systems to remove the oil from the surface would be a far better approach than dumping unprecedented quantities of toxic chemical dispersants into the Gulf, only to send the oil below the surface, out of sight and out of reach. We all want this mess out of the Gulf, off our beaches, and away from our wetlands. And the bottom line is that the BRS-2 will clear oil from the ocean surface at a rate that far exceeds any other method being utilized in the current response. With the BRS-2s working, there will be less oil in the Gulf and less on our shores. How much less depends on how soon we get started. Each day, the ability to remove some of this sludge is lost due to the use of dispersants, said to be 4 times more toxic than the oil itself. For Gulf's sake, please help us put the BRS-2 concept into action.